Hello, and welcome to session number 16 of FileMaker Group Therapy for Citizen Developers. My name is Tim Jones. In today's session, we're going to continue creating the data-driven navigation scheme we began in the last session. This data-driven navigation scheme must work for all the device types we anticipate connecting to our database, including desktop users, iPad, iPhone, and WebDirect. It needs to accommodate our principal navigation needs, like when we click buttons on our navigation bar at the top of each layout, but it also needs to accommodate navigation between related records, like when we click a button in a portal row to go to a detail view of that record in its own table. Lastly, it needs to track every layout the user visits so we can implement a back button, which we will do in our next session. Let's take a look at what we have so far. Here's the animal care database we've been building up throughout these sessions. And on each layout in our last session, we put a copy of this navigation bar that allows us to easily navigate from layout to layout. Let me bring up the script debugger and data viewer so we can see what this script is doing that these buttons are triggering. They're all triggering the same script. We're passing every bit of navigation through the same script, which is really going to help us, because then when we make changes to that script, every navigation button click is improved by whatever changes we make. So let's say I go from where I am now on the vet list layout into the visits list layout. I'll click the visits button here on the nav bar. The script debugger intercepts that script and says, okay, we're trying to perform the script called go to layout. And we're passing in a script parameter. Each one of these buttons has a script parameter assigned to it that passes in the name of the table that the user wants to go to, in this case, the visit table, and the name of the view that we want them to go to when they have clicked this button. In this case, I think the value is the list view, but those values are coming from that navigation table that we set up last time. As I step into this script, we see the steps. The first thing we do is we grab the incoming script parameter and store it in a variable called our parameter list. I'll step into that, and the new variable gets added to the list of variables that exist in memory. I'll double click on that so you can see what the value is, and you can see that it's in a list type of format. That is a carriage return delimited list. I find that's an easy way to be able to pass multiple values around. Then our next two script steps are simply going to grab each one of the individual values out of that list of values. The first one will create a variable called table and store value number 1 of the parameter list. In other words, the name of the table, visit. So as I step into that step, we get a new variable called table that just has visit pulled from the first line of our parameter list. Likewise, set variable called view, and that gets the second value from that parameter list. So I've successfully parsed up the list of information that the button passed into the script. Then we send them to the layout whose name is the name of the table, visit, then an underscore, then the name of the view, list, then an underscore, and then the device that they're on. And we captured that in our on startup script when the database was first opened. And we stored it in a global variable called $device. That's what makes this routine capable of handling various kinds of users, iPad users, iPhone users, WebDirect users, because each of our layouts is named with that ending part that describes what kind of device that layout is designed for. So the layout names are an important part of this navigation scheme. Of course, they all need to follow the same pattern. The name of the table, the name of the view that layout is designed for, and then the name of the device that layout is designed for. I'll go ahead and step into that step, and it'll take us to the visit list desktop layout there. And then the last step is just to adjust the window size nicely. And there we go. We've also got these buttons here that'll let us navigate from a list view layout to a form view layout. So if I click on the button here, you'll see that it actually triggers the exact same script. and goes through the exact same process. It's just that this time these buttons have the word form instead of list as what they're passing in. We'll step into that script. We'll grab the parameters and store them in a variable. There we go, visit form, and then the parameter list variable. And then we'll start parsing up that parameter list into its two components. So now we have a variable called table that says visit and a variable called view that says form. And now we can take the user to that layout, visit underscore form underscore desktop. There's a layout called that. And there we go. We end up at that layout. And we'll adjust the size of that layout appropriately. So that's what we've got so far, and that's working great. But we also want to provide navigation to related records. That is, we could put a button here next to the ID animal field that would take us to that animal record in the animal form desktop layout, or in other words, take us to scales in the animal form or in the animal table. Likewise, buttons next to customer, next to room, next to vet. These are all foreign key fields that would do well, or we would do well to let users quickly be able to navigate to any one of those records in their respective table. I used to use the script step go to related record for this kind of navigation, but no longer, because go to related record does not allow us to set the destination layout using a calculation. Thus, it's not flexible enough to go to a desktop version of a layout for desktop users and an iPad version of a layout for iPad users, and so on. Instead, I simulate the go to related record script step by performing its same steps separately. That is, store the relevant key field value in a variable, then go to the target table, perform a find for all the records that match that key field value, and then finally go to the desired layout. I'm going to go into layout mode, and I want to grab a copy of one of those buttons. So I'll just jump back to the previous layout where we have one of those buttons sitting right there, and I'll copy that so that the design will be identical on this new layout. We'll paste that button and then size it and position it appropriately next to our ID animal field, perhaps like so. That looks pretty good. As I double click on it, you'll see that it is set to use the go to layout script, but I don't want to use that one, not yet at least, or not directly. I want to write a new script that will handle our navigation between related records. So let's write this new script. I'll make a copy of our script template so that I don't have to type all of this other stuff. And then we'll position this new script where we want it to go in the navigation folder. And let's name this new script go to related records underscore. And then because this script is going to need some incoming script parameters, I like to name my scripts with a parentheses at the end, and then the name of the parameters or some kind of label that describes the parameters that I want, that I'm going to send into this script. And it reminds me then, as I assign this script to buttons, that I need to assign a script parameter or create a script parameter that feeds in the key value that I'm going to search for, the table in which we're going to search, and the specific field in that table where we're going to search. Add in our purpose, and the script is going to be called by navigation button clicks. And it's expecting to get in script parameters of the key field value that we're going to use as find criteria, then the target table that the user wants to go to, and then the target field to search. Okay, so again, those are just our comments about this script. I start almost every script with a performing of another script, the script startup script, that simply sets error capture to on, allows user abort, sets that to off, and closes a popover if there was one open. After that, we'll start to bring in our parameter list. So let's create a variable called $parameter list. You saw this same technique used in the last script. And for its value, we'll call the function getScriptParameter, whose job it is to grab the incoming script parameter from a button or a calling script and store it in the variable that we're creating. Okay. Then we'll start to parse up the script parameters that were passed in. We'll create another variable. This one we'll call it $key. And for its value, we'll use a function called the getValue function. The getValue function, I think we've talked about this in a previous session, grabs out of a particular list of values, our parameter list. It grabs a specific value number that you specify. We want to grab the first value, so I'll put a 1 there and hit OK. There, now we need 2 similar script steps, so I'll just hit Command D or duplicate to duplicate that twice again. We'll change the variable name from key to table for this second one, and we'll change the 1 to a 2, saying grab the second value, and likewise change the variable name to field and change the 1 to a 3 here. All right, so I made the variable names match the names of the prompts that I provided in the script name for consistency, of course. Next, we're going to perform a find in the table that the user is trying to go to find the related record. In this case, we would be saying, hey, we want to grab the ID number of that animal. Remember, we're on a visit record. Grab the ID number from the animal, and we're going to do that on the button here. And then take the user to a layout that's based on the animal table and search for the animal who has that ID number. That's essentially what we're going to be doing in these next couple of script steps. So I'm going to use the go to layout script step, GTL, go to layout, and I'm actually going to go to one of the developer layouts. Okay, I'm going to go to one of the developer layouts, and I'm going to get there by calculation because we know what table the user wants to go to. We've grabbed that information in this table variable. So say, all right, the name of the layout that we want to go to right now is the layout whose name has that table name and then has _dev, because I named all my developer layouts with that naming pattern, the name of the table followed by _dev, obviously for developer. I'll show you that really quickly here. There, so there's a layout called animal _dev, customer _dev. This is a really good habit. You should get yourself into this habit if you haven't already. Create a layout for every table in the system that's just for you as the developer to use for whatever purpose you might find it useful. Incredibly useful for script writing. All right, so we'll send the user to that layout. They won't see it, it'll happen so quickly. And there, now that we're in the right table, we will enter find mode. Okay, we don't want to pause there. We want to just go to find mode. Then we want to enter the criteria that we're searching for. Okay, and remember, we've grabbed the ID number of the record that we're searching for and stored it in this key field, in this key variable. And we've also got the name of the field that we want to search on. And so we're going to use a script step called setFieldByName. The setField script step itself allows you to push a value into a field. It's like doing data entry. It is doing data entry. But setFieldByName is useful when you can't in advance know the specific field that you'd like to populate with some piece of data. It allows you to specify the name of the field that you'd like to populate using a calculation. So it's very flexible. I'll use that one. Click the gear icon. We want to specify the target field, but when we click specify here, it doesn't bring up a list of fields and tables. It brings up a calculation dialog box. Fantastic. Now the name of the field that we're going to want to set, we stored that earlier in a variable called $field. And then what we want to push into that field here as criteria in find mode is the value in that key variable. So the calculated result is going to be a reference to our key variable. There we go. Now that we've filled that field with the desired find criteria, we'll go ahead and perform the find. Perform the find. That's like hitting the return key when you're in find mode, and it goes and does the find. Next, if there was only one record found, then let's say we want to send the user into the form view style layout for that table. We'd want to send them into the layout that would show them that one record in form view. But if there were multiple records found, we'd want to send them into a list view layout. Okay, so we're going to introduce an if statement here. We'll say if, and then we'll get the number of records that were found by using the get found count function. And we'll say if get found count equals 1, then perform our go to layout script, perform our navigation script that we've written earlier, we know works well, perform our go to layout script. And the name of the script reminds us again that we need to pass into that script the name of the table that we want to go to and the name of the view. Okay, so edit that, write a formula, write a calculation that returns in a nice list. It will return the name of the table that we want to take them to and the name of the view. There. Well, the name of the table that we want to take them to, of course, is stored in our table variable that we defined earlier. And the name of the view that we want to go to would be the word form, because there was only one record found. So let's send them into the form view for the animal table, for example, or customer or visit or vet or whatever you're in. There we go. And so now we're going to be performing that script, go to layout, and sending in the name of the table that we grabbed here and the word form, and that'll send them to a form view style layout. Otherwise, else, we'd want to do this same basic thing, but send them to the list view layout of that same table instead of the form view layout. So again, I'll hit Command D on the keyboard to duplicate that script step, drag it down into place under else, and then just change the script parameter to pass in the word list. So we'll be taken to a list layout instead of a form layout because there were more than one record found. All right, that's our script for going to related records. Now I'll retool this button by double clicking on it to say, hey, we need you to perform the go to related records script, not the go to layout script. And we need to pass in some different parameters. The go to related records script expects 3 parameters to come in, right? The key value that we're going to search for, the name of the table that we want to go to, and the name of the field that we want to search for that key value. We'll again do it as a list. I really like that approach. The name of the table that we want to go to here, again, I kind of got it hidden there, but remember, we're going to be sending the user to the animal table. So I'll literally type quote, oh, sorry, wrong argument. The first argument is key, the key value that we're going to search for. Well, it's right here. We're going to grab the ID number of the animal that is in this visit record. There we go. Now the second argument, what table do we want to take them to? This is where we would want to enter the name of the table, animal, oops, and semicolon. And then lastly, what field over there in that animal table would we want to search for that key value within? Well, let's say I don't remember what my fields are called in that animal table. We'll just take a quick look. And I see, oh yeah, I called the primary key field ID. So if I double click on that field, it'll insert the name of that field. But inserted like that, it would actually try to grab the value out of that field. Instead, I'm really just trying to pass the name of this field. So I'm going to wrap that in quotes because I literally want the phrase animal : ID to be sent along with this into this script when the user clicks the button. Say okay there and okay again. All right, our new button looks good. We'll save the changes to the layout and then exit out of layout mode. And with the script debugger on and the data viewer showing. I'll go ahead and run this script. So I'm going to say, all right, we're looking to find the animal called Scales in its native context, in the animal form desktop layout. Let's see if we can get there. Clicking the button will launch the script. We'll step into that script step. First thing we do is perform our script startup script, of course, which sets error capture on, allow user board off, closes any popovers that are open. Good. Then grab the parameters that were passed in and store them in a variable called param list. I'll double click on that variable and you can see there are the 3 pieces of information that we passed in on this button here. We assigned those values to this button, so that seems like it's working well. Now we'll start to break those up. We'll grab each one of those 3 values and store them in their own separate variables. One called key gets the number 4, one called table gets the name animal, and one called field gets the name animal : ID. Then we'll go to the layout whose name is animal_dev. Now, of course, the assumption is that you've already created any layouts that you try to go to via a calculation like this, and we have, so it takes us there. Then we'll enter find mode. Okay, notice now we're in find mode. And then we'll set field by name. The name of the field is this field right here, animal : ID, which is right here. Now, even if I wasn't clicked in that field, this would still work. Just to prove it, I'll click out of that field and then step into this step, and it puts the 4, the key value, into that field, animal ID. Fantastic. Now we'll perform the find, and we found the record for the animal that we're hoping for, Scales. We check to see if the found count was 1 or something other than 1. Since it is 1, this statement will be true, and we'll perform our go to layout script. As I step into that script, now we're into this called script, and the call stack grows to show you we're in a script that was called by a statement in this earlier script. This script here was called likewise by a button click. All right, we've been through this one before, so I'll race through it. And we go to the right layout, animal form desktop, resize the window to fit. That takes us back now to the original calling script. We've just performed this. The else statement will not be performed because it's the first conditional was true, so the else is ignored, and we're on to end if, and the script is done. So it works. Fantastic. We'll go back into the visit form layout for one of these records and into layout mode. And it's pretty simple matter to then add that functionality to these other related fields, making it so that our users will be able to easily go to the related customer, the related room, and the related veterinarian. We'll just need to modify the script parameters, right? For customer, we're not trying to send them to animal, we're trying to send them to customer. The key value would be the ID number of the customer that is sitting in that ID customer field right there. So key value becomes a reference to the foreign key field ID customer. Name of the table we want to go to, customer. Name of the field that we want to search for this customer ID number is going to be customer ID. And of course, I was careful to be consistent about how I named my primary key fields. So we'll just change that name manually rather than going and hunting for it like I did last time. Okay, next, double click on the room button, do the same thing. Say, all right, the key value is going to be the value that's in this foreign key field ID room. We're going to send them to the room table and search for the desired room record by the value in that room ID field. And lastly, veterinarians or doctors. The key value is the ID number of the vet. Target table, vet, the target field to search, the ID field there in the vet table. Nice. We'll exit out of layout mode, save the changes, and let's test it out. Let's see if we can get to the veterinarian, Dr. Blackwood. Boom, we're there on Dr. Blackwood's record. Nice. Likewise, can we get to the room B? Boom, we're there in the room form layout. And so it just works nicely and so easy to set up. Get to a customer, for example. Boom, we're at that customer. Okay. In the same way, let's say that we would like to be able to jump to the household record that is referenced here in this foreign key field ID household when we're looking at a particular customer. So we'll do the same thing. Let me jump over to that visit layout where we'd created all those buttons and copy one of them just to make it simple. And then we'll jump back into the, whoops, wrong layout, sorry. Which one was it that I wanted to go to? Customer form, there we go. And we'll paste a copy of that button. Okay. And then we'll just modify the button there, the script parameter that's sent in with that button by double clicking on the button. We'll change the list parameters to say, hey, we're not looking for the ID animal. Actually, we're looking for the ID number, or looking based on the ID number of the household. And we'd want to send the user to a layout that's based on the household table. And there's a field over there called household ID, right? So again, same idea, nothing different there. And then as we exit out of layout mode and save the changes, I'll test that out. Let's see if we can get to the Jones family household record. Click, and we're into the household form layout and into the Jones family household record. Okay, cool. Now, so far, all of the examples have been going from a record that just relates to one record and takes us to that one record in form view. Let's say that here in this context, we'd like to be able to jump to all of the customers, the members of the Jones family household, for example. And so we're going to add a little button here that will do that. Let's see if I still have that button on the clipboard. I think I do. Yep, sure enough. We'll bring it down there and double click on it. And you'll see that hopefully pleasantly surprisingly, we'll be able to do the same exact thing. We won't need to change our script at all. It's just that this button will have assigned to it a household ID that will go over to the customer table and search for all the customers who have that same household ID. And there will be more than one of them. Okay, so again, we're going to be calling the same script, go to related records, but I'll change the script parameter. In this case, the key value that we're going to be searching based on is the household ID number, the primary key field here, right? We're in a household record and we're trying to be able to go to all of the customers who are in that same household. So we're going to grab the primary key value of the household. We're going to send the user over to a layout that's based on the customer table. And then as for which field to search for that household ID, well, again, let's say that I forget what it's called. So we'll jump over to the customer table and I'm reminded that, oh yeah, I called it ID household. So I'll double click on that field and it'll drop it in there in between the quotes. And so we're going to say, grab the household ID out of this current household record, jump over to the customer table and then search for all customers that have an ID household that matches this current household ID. We'll say okay and exit. And as I click the button here, I'll do it with the script debugger just so you can see it happen in slow motion. As I click the button, there, we'll step into that script. I'll step over that script so that we don't have to see those steps again. All right, the parameter list variable gets created and let's see its values, right? The number one, household ID number one, the customer table, and the customer ID household field name, not the field value, but the field name. So far, so good. Then we'll parse up the parameter list into its individual elements, key, table, and field. Those all are now created. Then we'll send the user over to our dev table, in this case for the customer table, our dev layout, I should say, for the customer table. That takes us there. We'll enter find mode. we'll set the field ID household to the value of the primary key value that we grabbed earlier and perform the find. And it finds 3 customer records that were part of household number 1. Then comes our if statement. If get found count is 1, then do that. Otherwise, do this. And here we'll perform our go to layout script where we do all of that same stuff. We've seen this already. And notice this time it took us to a list view because the parameter being passed in was the word list. We can see that right here. And there we go. All right, so we've got a successful data-driven navigation script. And that's what I wanted to get into today. Any questions on what you just saw on that approach to creating data-driven navigation?